All right, welcome back to another session of the Deconstructing Faith Summit. I'm Angela Harrington, your host, and I've got something really cool on the schedule for you here right now. Before I introduce our next guest, I'm just going to remind you to drop your comments in the chat and make sure that you're having conversations over in the Faith Deconstruction Cafe, because we want a connected community, and this is a safe space to ask questions, get more information, and just connect with other people who are also walking through this long and winding road we call deconstructing our faith. And don't forget that by engaging in those two spaces, you're earning the opportunity to win a free seat over in the Deconstruct Your Faith course that starts right after the summit, hosted by me. We'll talk about that more a little bit later, but make sure that you're staying engaged and connected, because we're going to draw those winners on Friday. So next session, are you ready? Going to be a good one. They're all good. I say that about every single one. They're all good. But let me introduce you to Courtney. Courtney's a writer, journalist, gatherer, and anti-racism coach from Raleigh, North Carolina. She's written for national outlets like News One and The Appeal, as well as regional and local publications such as Scalawag Magazine, Walter Magazine, The Carolinian, and Indie Week. She's also the founder of Black Oak Society, a collective of Black creatives in the greater Raleigh area. And their flagship publication, BOS Magazine, is a literary magazine focused on giving Black Raleigh her flowers now. Love that. So gorgeous. You have a way with words, I can tell. Finally, Courtney also coaches individuals and organizations as they seek to lead and live in a way that undermines white supremacy and honors the humanity of all people. She loves to love her spouse, David, of 10 years, and her two little humans who are endless, hilarious meme reels. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Angela. This is really cool what you're doing, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Thanks. It's going to be so amazing. Every time I hop on a call like this, there's just such beautiful wisdom that comes out. I can't wait to hear what you have to say to pour it out on our audience, and it's going to be fabulous. So thanks for being here. I would love it if you wouldn't mind starting by just telling us a little bit about how your faith has been shaped by time and has changed over the years.
As a geriatric millennial, the term deconstruction, I don't even think was around at the time that my husband and I, David, left the church. So that happened around 2012. Was like the beginning part of it. I wrote a piece about it in Scalawag about my faith in that deconstruction process, where that first like break in the rose-colored glasses for me was the murder of Trayvon Martin. And the experience I had was I was obviously devastated growing up in a predominantly white life outside of my nuclear family. I had a lot of anti-Black racism as baggage of my own. But hearing his story, it could have been one of my brothers on any given day. We were in those types of neighborhoods all the time. A lot of our associations were white and rich. And it was terrifying and shocking. And then a good friend of mine from church that I grew up with went on a pretty intense tirade about the whole thing. He was white on Facebook. And it was just definitely that feeling like the rug was ripped from under my feet moment. It really made me second guess everyone and everything around me as far as my church. And so from there, we were in this questioning place into finally leaving the church. I was a worship pastor at the time. That was traumatic in and of itself, leaving, because there's a lot of power play happening with that.
Yeah.
And so that was our journey starting in about 2013 is when we finally left. And it was tough. It was tough unlearning all that I'd learned since I was like a little kid and feeling like God was not happy with me because I wasn't in the church 4 and 5 days a week. My tithes weren't going to the church. I was not doing all these things. But during that same time, there was a lot of healing that happened for me as far as my racial identity, and intertwined with that was the healing of my religious identity. And part of that was reading Frederick Douglass's Slave Narrative, where he talks about the American Christianity and the hypocrisy to abide the institution of slavery using the name of Christ to excuse it. And it is one of the most powerful essays. I encourage everyone to read it. It is just searing. And I identified with it so deeply. And I also felt like he was a man of faith. He was also a feminist. He was also a Black liberation leader. And so I was like, I found myself in that place and continued on with Rosa Parks and Coretta Scott King and Malcolm X being a man of faith and also a leader. And all of these people that I'm like, oh, I'm all these things. I don't just have to be jumping worship leader girl. You know?
Yeah, because we put people in boxes like that.
That's
Like,
right.
here's your identity, jumping worship leader role. That's who you are, and it's very flat.
Flat.
And
Yes.
don't step out of that line because we don't know where to put you if you show up differently.
Right. So I was just able to know and learn now so much more. And I could worship God in different ways and have a relationship. We actually found a home in a Greek Orthodox church that was nearby and joined the church there. And so that's the church that we've been a part of for 7 years. And that's been a journey too. I feel like I'm now in like a kind of a newer deconstructive journey, even with that. But it was so cool to find a space to call home that was so different, but also felt so familiar.
Yeah.
Um, and also so very welcoming. And so I think the thing about deconstruction is it's never fully done if you're doing it. And so when people, like we were talking about before, try to sell you a package of A, B, and C and you're done, it's a red flag, friends.
It is. It's not like building a bookshelf. Like it's it comes in stages, it comes in waves. It really is spiritual maturity. That's all deconstruction is spiritual maturity. And so it definitely we're all still on that process, in that process.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Cool.
So
Thanks so much for sharing that. This session, we were talking right before we started recording, talking a little bit about this session and talking about disrupting white supremacy. The title of it is Disrupting White Supremacy, Answering the Call of Active Allyship. What does that mean? What is allyship? What is active allyship? Do we get to be disruptors and still be Christians?
yeah, that's a really good question. It's definitely a growing up in a lot of in the spaces that we are all understanding we grew up in, fundamentalist, evangelical, reformed, whatever that flavor is, that was sprouted out of the Enlightenment, so sprouted out of a very intense kind of white supremacy, capitalist, colonialist kind of framework. No, being a disruptor is not Christian. You have to stay in line. Like you have to the rules, and questioning authority, which is the root of disruption, the root of revolution, is not okay. And the funny part about that is Christ was a disruptor before he was even born.
I know, right? This isn't a new thing.
Yeah, like he basically just kicked every single social norm in the teeth from his inception. And Mary, of course, as well. Like we got to bring in the fact that this woman chose this path that had so much resistance. And so I think it's part of that deconstruction journey is deconstructing the doctrine that we were all raised in from the life of the person who we have chosen to follow, and realizing that there's a dissonance there. And so there are going to be some people that I talk about that are friends of mine, or 2 degrees of separation, friends of friends, who are
Right.
doing incredible work as people of faith, who are disrupting within and outside of the church these types of status quos that are just clinging for dear life right now. And yeah, and really just following the example of Christ as being someone who seeks and saves those who have been displaced, thinking of the lost not so much as someone who is a wanderer, but maybe more of a refugee, maybe more of someone
Yeah.
who has been plucked out of belonging and put in an outside marginalized group, like the
Yeah.
lost sheep. So I think that's who our example is, and they're just following it so beautifully. I want to lift up their work as examples for white folks who are wondering what this all means for them in their journey as a faith-filled person.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's really cool that you bring the worship pastor context into this because I feel like this disruptor, being a disruptor and even allyship and being activists it's like worship, where there's a corporate responsibility where we need to do this as a body, as a community. We need to do this together, but there's also an individual mandate. And so I can't wait to hear some of these people that you're going to share, and how they're navigating that, and how they're navigating, how we navigate an individual responsibility to allyship and the group responsibility at the same time, because both are really modeled well by Christ.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So fire away. I want to hear about some of these people that you're going to share with
Awesome.
us.
Okay, this is really fun to be able to, one, talk about friends,
Yeah.
but it's also, I am deeply inspired by these individuals, because one of the things I want to talk about initially is that I opened my workshop, which is called Know Better, Do Better, the Legacy of White Allyship, and I go deeper into the history of allyship throughout our country. But one of the things I'd like to talk about is white supremacy screws us all. It's definitely a collective screwing that happens with white supremacy, because it is all hurting us into not just this broad sense of you have white skin and therefore you're supreme. It's more of, if you're all of these things, if you're white, rich, able-bodied, male, cisgendered, straight, Christian, rich,
Right.
all
Right.
things. And so there's so many people who have white skin, and they have to choose, are they going to align with this thing that they are taught makes them better and therefore cut off the rest of themselves? Or am I going to somehow try and show up like a whole person and therefore move myself further and further from this like solar system that we've built of like supremacist hierarchy? And so,
because there's very few people that check all those boxes. And
right,
those are the ones that have the power, and those are the ones that the system will keep in power.
despite you capping for them or not, that's a thing. I have a picture. I'm doing a talk boop. My babies, my little memes.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to talk about a few of those people who really are the history of the church. Obviously, if you've read any like Jemar Tisby, or, oh man, my friend Allie, my friend in my head. I don't know.
Allie Henry.
Allie Henny, yeah.
Henny, yes.
Henny, yeah, she's my friend in my head. You'll know that the white church more often than not has been on the wrong side of history as far as white supremacist delusion, as Sonia Renee Taylor coined that term, or even white perversion, which I've heard very recently used. But the thing about it is, it's never been a consensus.
Yeah.
All white people have not been fans of white supremacy, and throughout history there have been those who have risen up. The white church has less of those people. The Protestant church in America has less of those people, but they still exist, and I encourage people to go and learn and find those folks. But today I've been really privileged of making friends with several people who are really doing amazing work. And the first two people I want to lift up are a couple out of Charlotte, and their names are Greg and Helms Gerald. So Greg and Helms are a beautiful couple. They were born and raised in North Carolina, and have lived in a West Charlotte community for over 15 years. For anybody who knows anything about Charlotte, West Charlotte is a predominantly Black, predominantly poor, undervalued, under-resourced part of the city that was developed after urban renewal. So it was, at one point, was a thriving Black community. Urban renewal came, put a highway right in between,
in the middle. Ugh.
yeah. And it devastated that space. And so they've been there for a very long time. There are a white couple, as I said earlier, who have kind of chose to be there and become a part of the community, not to save it, but to be there as a part. And they have been embraced after showing dedication to the people, to the humans there. They call themselves professional door answerers. They have a hospitality ministry there. Greg is also a writer, and he is a musician, and Helms is an incredible visual artist. And the work that they do there that really inspires me is, one, that embedding into a community, not to save, but to be a part, to see through their eyes the rest of the world. And whatever they do as activists is completely led by the people that they are in communion with. their neighbors. And so early on, it was being there for the kids. So they did a
Sure.
lot of youth ministry work, going on trips and having Bible studies and that kind of thing. And as those kids grew up and moved on and with their lives, now they're doing more in the face of a lot of gentrification. They're doing a lot of work around housing.
Yeah,
And so they're
that's
really,
fantastic.
yeah, they're really using their power as white folks, but also as creatives, and ministers to in every space that they are in, whether they are guest ministering at a local church,
Hmm.
writing for a online publication, doing an art exhibition. They are ringing the bell about affordable housing. They're ringing the bell
Yeah.
about inequities in our housing system. And I love the listening. The listening for them
Hmm.
is the key that I want to offer to the audience, is that there's an art to listening as an ally. And there's a way that it's described here it's called transformative listening.
Yeah.
The transformative listening. There's a saying that in my old church experience that a pastor used to say is, and when you're in a place where you really don't know where to go or what to do next, that place of confusion, like what my next step is in life, he would say, what's the last thing God asked you to do?
Hmm.
And then you go back in your memory, in your journal, or however you pray, and find that last thing. And that's where you start from. And I really believe that applies in terms of allyship, is when you're in a place as a white person and you're like, I don't really know what to do next. I don't really know how to show up for this thing. Go in your mind and think, what's the last thing a Black friend has asked me to do?
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And it seems really harsh to think about allowing a community to shape the ministries that are supposed to be supporting it is revolutionary. There's just this moment of dissonance in me of like, why, yeah, why didn't we start there? And of course the answer is colonialism, gentrification, all
Right.
the whole system, everything, the hydra that is white supremacy and all of the arms that have really spidered out across our country.
Yeah, that is what you said is so key, because I think a lot of us are still, even as we, I think cognitively know, like rationally know that white supremacy can take all types of shapes and forms. It's no longer like a Klan hood or a cross burning or that kind of thing. I
Right.
think still in our bodies, we don't often recognize some of the more insidious and sneakier types of white supremacy in our minds, which
Yeah.
includes knowing better than what the person asking for your assistance is saying. So
Yeah.
whatever they're saying, you're like, I hear you, but I think this would be a better thing, or I'm
Yeah.
not sure
Yeah.
this is the right thing, or
Actually need that thing you're asking for.
right.
Trust me, it's the hierarchy. It's like you were talking about
Yes.
earlier, it's the layers. And so, me as a white person, I'm up here.
Right.
I know what you need better. Let me teach you. Let me do it for you. And it's just
Right.
that whole performative thing is just so unhealthy for everyone. And it doesn't bring change, it just deepens the wounds.
Exactly. Exactly. And so I really just adore them. You can look them up.
We'll put a link on here too, right
Yeah,
under the
yeah,
video. So everybody,
yeah.
anybody you mentioned, we'll drop a link on the page
Okay,
so that
perfect.
everybody's got that.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're great. And then also, if I disrupt a lot, I have ADD, so I like to jump in. So just being forewarned. I'm a jumpy talker.
That's
Um,
okay. We'll get where we're supposed to be. I trust both of us.
awesome, awesome. And so the next person I want to talk about, which is actually a friend of Greg and Helms, is Jonathan Wilson Hartgrove. And Jonathan Wilson Hartgrove has a really beautiful story, because he was a young high schooler growing up in rural North Carolina in a very conservative Baptist church. And he decided to invite Reverend William Barber to his church to speak. And he's a high schooler when he did this. And it was really out of a curiosity, but also out of, I know better. I know what God really wants us to do as conservative young white man. But this guy is saying something different and I want to put him on the spot. And so Reverend Barber actually answered, even though the space that he was stepping into was very unsafe for him.
Mm-hmm.
He answered the letter of this high schooler at the time and came and they met, and over time they connected, and they actually together co-founded Repairs of the Breach and the Poor People's campaign. And so Hartgrove is a close friend now of Reverend William Barber. They do a lot of work together. They've been arrested together many times.
That's the mark of a true disrupting friendship.
Right.
That and getting thrown in Facebook jail. Those are the two things that we really, check your friends.
I really love about Jonathan Hartgrove is I love his curiosity. For me, he represents a curiosity. And the thing about another insidious thing about like white supremacist delusion is that it robs white people curiosity and imagination. Because if you believe everything already, if you believe that your perspective is standard, then you do not have the compelling sense to dig and ask and wrestle. And Jonathan Hartgrove is definitely the epitome of someone who digs and asks and wrestles. I actually was able to see him speak with Reverend Barber and Dr. Kendi a couple years ago at Reverend Barber's church. And it was the most dynamic conversation being in a church. So we're in this church setting, we have the choir singing, bringing us in, we have the sermon, we have the plate passing, and then we have these three dynamic men, all men of faith that I think people don't really think about the Dr. Ibram Kendi as a man of faith, but he is.
He is, yeah.
And so these three men of faith talking about what it means to live like Christ and to live that disruptor's life. And it was such a phenomenal conversation, but he was definitely like so hungry. Like he was so hungry to learn from these men around him. He was so humble and like understanding that whatever they were saying was true and right, and he needed to internalize and bring it in and just like asking for more.
Yeah.
But the other thing I love about Jonathan Hartgrove is he has a good relationship with his power.
Tell us about that, because that's a heck of a statement. What does it mean to have a good relationship with your power?
What it means, and this is my interpretation, but as white folks, I've noticed there is such a wrestling with power. It's usually like this thing where it's worn with such shame, I think. Yeah. For those who really care about liberation, white folks carry a lot of shame around their power and their privilege. And anybody who's acquainted with Brene Brown's work around understanding shame will know that there's very little good you can do in that space of shame. Yeah. When you think you're inherently a problem, then what can you do to resolve that except to go away and make yourself small, remove yourself from the situation? But you just bring your power with you, you know, and just get left behind when you exit stage left. Like you just bring all those resources, all that power with you. And there's that vacuum where change could happen and can no longer happen. And Jonathan Hartgrove is someone who faced that, who like looked all that square in the face and found a way to overcome any sense of shame for being a white person and really allowing God to come in and heal him and say, you don't have to be who anybody says you are. You don't have to be that. Like I created you to follow me.
Not to fit into the system of white supremacy in America in this decade. Yeah. It sounds like he's done a really good job of wrestling with what was defining him.
Yes.
And really challenging where he was getting his sense of direction from and allowing that to be shaped by people the system says he should not have been listening to.
Yes. Yes, exactly. I love to say that your white skin is not an inherent barrier to your participation in Black liberation. I
Oh
do
my
not
gosh, that's
believe
so
in the
good.
inherent racism of white people, because I do
Mhm.
not believe, if white supremacy, if racism is a man-made structure and we are natural creations,
Mhm.
however you say, whether you believe we're created by God or created by science or whatever it is, we're a natural creation. So we're outside of the system of a man-made society, a man-made civilization. There's
Yeah.
no way you can be just born into the world inherently anything. And of course, I understand the influence of a society, and I understand that you are born with a privilege. That's the case because you're born into a culture. But
Mhm.
being inherently against anybody or anything, being a mother of two, I can tell you there's no such thing. You
That's
know?
conditioning. That's clearly something we've learned, which I hope that people in the audience take a deep breath and that brings some relief, because what that
Yes.
means is if it's learned, it can be unlearned. It won't be easy, it won't be pretty, and it's probably going to make you really uncomfortable.
So true.
And also, it's possible.
It's so true. It's so true. And that it's like taking off one yoke and putting on another, right? So taking one yoke off is I'm not inherently a bad person. I'm not inherently a racist person, etc. The yoke that you put on is that every time I am racist, every time I do behave according
Mhm.
to this, it is my choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Conscious or unconscious, it is my decision to get into this stream, to abide by the status quo.
Yeah. My husband and I actually were having a conversation earlier because I have 4 sons and a daughter.
Oh,
And
wow.
we've had some fantastic, my husband and I have had some fantastic conversations about male privilege, which is just another layer of white
Mhm.
supremacy. And acknowledging that something that we might say to the boys, if we turn around and say it to my daughter, it's landing in a different place.
Yeah,
Right? And so, as her dad, as a man, he has to work a little harder to think about that, right?
yeah.
And to acknowledge that, especially when it comes to talking about our bodies. My daughter
Mhm.
and I, as women, we have a whole different level of pressure about our bodies than what our guys have. They still have some pressure, but it's very different because of the patriarchal society that we live in. So,
Yeah.
same thing. It sounds like you're saying the same thing with racism, where
Oh, yeah.
I can choose not to be racist, and I need to go one step further and keep in the front of my mind that I'm speaking to and I'm living with and I'm caring for and being cared for by people who have an experience I will never fully be able to internalize and understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And you have something to bring to the table that can begin to alleviate harm, to struggle alongside to alleviate that harm. You have, so there's, I don't remember, know if you remember that there's like a video that was circulating around for a while, where I think it was in California, and there was a police involved shooting, and the victim's brother, who was black, the
Mm-hmm.
victim was black, the victim's brother, who was black, showed up at a city council meeting angry, saying this is something that you need to deal with, like my brother is gone because of these policies and things that you're doing. And there are security guards approaching him, right, as he's expressing just with
Mm.
full passion and grief and anger that things need to change so people can live full lives and not just be taken out over the smallest infractions. And as the security guards are approaching him, there are white individuals who stand in between. And
Mm.
so they come up and they stand around him. And the phenomenal thing that happens is that security guards just stop.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean, and it doesn't have to be that extreme, but I think it's a good picture to show that your bodies have a level of privilege that, if in that particular instance, when that carceral authority saw that white body, they changed their response.
Yeah.
They probably weren't even entirely conscious of what they were doing.
Right. They just saw an angry black man who
Yep,
they've been conditioned to believe is a threat and
exactly.
started to move in
And
out
then
of,
the white bodies came in and they stopped.
They're like, oh, wait, maybe this is okay.
Maybe, yeah,
Right.
maybe I
All
don't
on
have
us,
to
you're
intervene.
right, probably all on a subconscious level, but that's the part that we have to root out.
And that's the disrupting that can happen. That's the power that you hold to disrupt. And Jonathan Hartgrove has grappled with that, has embraced that, and unapologetically used it to do some really incredible things.
I'll make sure we have the links to all of these people, and I'll see if I can find that video too. If you haven't want to send it to me, we'll make sure we drop it down here. If people haven't seen that video, they can experience that and keep that front of mind as we learn how to be allies and active
Yeah.
allies, actively working on ourselves and actively listening to our neighbors and our communities to learn how to do this better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
If somebody is sitting in the audience right now and is, okay, this is new for me, but this is
Mhm.
something I really want to work on.
Yeah.
What's one simple step that you can give them? One little thing that they can do to just start stretching their legs a little bit and becoming more aware about everything that we've talked about today.
Yeah. So this is my favorite little exercise that I share with my clients. And it comes up a lot, especially when a client finds themselves in a situation that's a conversation that turns left with another white person.
Okay.
So I'm sure you've been in that experience where you're maybe talking to a parent or an uncle, someone from the boomer generation, maybe one of your conservative coworkers, and you're having a very pedestrian conversation, and all of a sudden a hot button is pushed. Someone says the word immigration. Someone says
Mhm.
the phrase critical race theory. Someone says police involved, fill in the blank. And all of a sudden, I call it it's like their algorithm takes over, and they just change into this irrational place of just like just a flood of language comes out of their mouth where it's no longer a conversation. You're like basically being lectured, or you're just witnessing a tirade. And it can be a very jarring experience. It can be a very triggering experience for some of us, especially white women who find themselves in this very interesting intersection of like having more power than most, but still being victims of patriarchy.
Right.
So many women who've been in abusive situations can be triggered by the intensity of the turn of those types of conversations, and it can be very hard to know what to do. And fight or flight can often like come in, whether you want to start arguing back in defense,
Right.
or you get silent and you're just like, okay, I see this happen, I'm just gonna go find a safe place and be done with it. And I love to introduce what I call like the third option.
Okay.
And the third option is a question. And it sounds really simple, but it's such a powerful way to personally ground, because you don't have to be combative. You don't have to think on your feet, which can be really hard at that time. A lot of times I hear people say, I don't feel like I know enough to argue back. Like I want to argue back, but I can't, my mind's not bringing up any examples or statistics or whatever. And so I say, ask a question. Ask, why is this important to you?
Mm.
Or like, what prompted this for you? And what it does is it's disarming, but it's also undermining. It's undermining this hierarchy. It's undermining that the instinctual thing that causes people to think, okay, now it's time for me to just talk over you and tell you all the things.
Right. Because a
Yeah.
lot of times when people are in that situation, like you said, they're completely triggered. They're all of the brain chemicals that show up when you're being threatened are what's driving, and they're ready for a fight. They're ready.
Right.
And so
Right.
when you don't engage in the way that they're anticipating you're going to engage, it kind of, there's this, wait, what was that?
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of it, like you said, a disruption
It is.
that breaks that loop. And
It's a
so,
disruption. That's it.
and then the other piece of it too is what we know about brain chemistry is that when that part of our brain is engaged, it's really hard, if not impossible, to access the logic part of our brain. So
Right.
if you're talking to someone and they're in that fully triggered state, statistics don't matter.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
Exactly.
Like having all the perfect words and all the perfect data and all of those things doesn't actually matter because you're going to be speaking Latin as far as they're concerned. So I love the idea of disarming with a question. And it sounds like you're saying open-ended questions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
open.
it's a question to connect to that person and then reconnect that person to themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Because then they have to try to disconnect from the triggered piece to be like, wait, what am I feeling? What am I saying? Like, why is this important to me? I love that. Absolutely love that. So, if people want to stay connected with you and they want to keep learning from you, I know you've got some great offerings coming up. Tell us where to find you online. How can we connect with you?
Yeah, so my personal IG is Courtney Has Words. So Courtney period has period words. And I'm also building up a Instagram for my community, the Know Better Do Better crew, or the KBDB crew. And that's building as well. And I also have a newsletter, which you can find through my Patreon and Substack. And it is a paid newsletter. I will drop every once in a while some free stuff, but it is like a pretty nominal paid newsletter. Yeah, and there's all kinds of things on Patreon as you go up in the tiers, everything from like collective, anti-racism coaching to one-on-one to zines to all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Make sure that we've got that link here. One of the things that we haven't talked about in this summit at all, but I want to just mention here is that Black women are notoriously not paid for their work. Okay.
Yes,
Notoriously, not just underpaid, but not paid.
not paid at all.
So, in addition to facing whatever battles they're facing because they're living in a system of white supremacy, they're also not getting compensated for their time, for their energy, for their knowledge, and for all of those things. So, I'm really glad that you've got a Patreon link. Patreon is a platform that lets you pay people for their time and for their investment. So please take a look at that. And remember, when people are posting content online, a lot of that people aren't getting paid for. So ask if somebody's really like lighting you up and giving you a tremendous amount of knowledge, ask if they have a Patreon. Ask if there's a way
Absolutely.
that you can support the work that they're doing. Because so many of the Black women that I've spoken to who are brilliant and doing amazing work are really having a hard time making ends meet because they're not getting paid for the work that they're doing, or not getting paid appropriately for the work that they're doing. Yeah, I'll get off my little platform.
No, thank you for saying that, Angela. Thank you for taking it to the time, because it is something that it's true. And then what often happens is people learn from us, and then people with greater platforms will use what they've learned and they get all kinds of great things, you know?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
not a matter of, it's not, there are feelings, but I think more of it is we understand it's not a pie. There's plenty for everyone.
yeah.
And we just want we what we deserve. We don't want what other people have. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Lori, Kimberly, and I discussed this in a different session. I don't know if it's aired or not because we're recording these out of order, but we talked about how a major function of white supremacy is that you have to be a white, affluent male to publish. And we as a
Right.
society look for that as a default. So part of being a disruptor is saying, okay, where are the white affluent men in academia who are publishing? Where are they getting their information from? Because they're not
Mm,
actually living this life. So go back and look for people who are giving you firsthand accounts.
yeah.
Don't just go by the, okay, here we go, we're going to say it. Don't just go by the New York Times bestseller by white authors talking about racism. Go by Austin Channing Brown's book, you know?
Absolutely.
Go by Professor Kendi's book. There's so many people who have been mentioned in
So
this.
many.
There's so many resources that you can go to. And don't just listen to Black voices, but actually value Black voices in the same way that we value white voices, white,
Absolutely.
male, affluent voices. So
There we
I
go,
said I was going to
Angela.
get off my platform, but I didn't.
But you are exemplifying disrupting an active allyship right here and
Thank
now.
you.
And yeah, if you know, my part is great. And if you need an example, just fast forward to Angela's moment. And there you go. Perfect
There you
example
go.
here.
It all came. See, I told you we'd get to wherever we needed to be. Thanks so much for your time, Courtney. Y'all need to go follow Courtney. And if you're not on Instagram looking at the deconstruction community, it's pretty vibrant over there. There's some really just phenomenal, like we could have had 100 speakers this week and still not have highlighted all of the amazing people over there. So
Yeah.
highly encourage you to, keep dropping things in the chat. Go over to the Faith Deconstruction Cafe, drop your comments over there. There's going to be lots of conversations happening all week long. And then, of course, remember that engaging gets you those entries to win that seat in the Deconstruct Your Faith course, which we're going to be announcing on Friday. So thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you. And I will see all of you in the next session. Thanks.